drop downs, but there's some more information in here that I'm not really providing the users. So if you said generate a contour map, and I don't have any data URLs, I'll get a predefined query, and I want to see it in the web browser, and I know the format's like FITS, which is used by the astronomy community, and then a data type, it's gravity data, for instance. You know, you would build a query, you submit it, visualization pipelines empty set. I mean, so I couldn't satisfy the query. I don't know if I did something wrong, or if maybe there's not the knowledge base isn't able to satisfy that query. I'm really not sure about those things.
Can you go over the query a little bit, just stepping over it?
Sure. So let's look at some examples then. So these prefixes right here, they're just for human readability. Essentially, I'll show you where they fit in, but the meat of the query is really down here. So I have a keyword called visualize. The visualize clause specifies, well, what data do you want to visualize? And as I said, Disco kind of assumes that all your data is already on the web, so you should make it referenceable. And I'm not sure what's going on there, but there it goes. So I'd like to visualize this data set as you can specify, this is where you specify a visualization abstraction. And if you go back here, these are the known visualization abstractions that the knowledge base is aware of. And like I said, that's entirely dependent because someone went, registered a service and said, hey, it generates a 3D bar chart, or it generates a time series plot. So this list grows as more people register different visualization services. So this is where you specify during the in clause. So I want to visualize this URL as this line, as this visualization. And this is where you specify a viewer set. In this case, I want to view it in the web browser. But people might also generate services that register services that generate visualizations that can be imported into, I don't know, let's see, like ParaView or D3, which is another visualization suite. But usually, if you want it on the web, you say web browser, and this tells the system, hey, web browsers, they view PDFs, PNGs, GIFs, so it knows how to, when it generates a pipeline, it'll make sure to find a pipeline that generates a visualization that can be viewed in the web browser.
So just to be clear, I'm entering the information above the line, and it generates that query below the line.
Yes.
Right? Not writing that.
So right, you're not writing that query, but you could go in there and edit it if you wanted to. And then here's what I said, here's the formatted type. And this is a bad type from somebody else's ecology, but you can go out and see what D19 is. But it's a URI and some ontology describing some class of data. But the format here, I'm saying that it's my input data is in FITS, and the data type is this thing called, this whole thing, pound D19. So based on that, you can run a query, but that's not a good one to show. So let me show you. Here's a, I don't know, here's one. Good one. Like you go back here. These are just examples. You can all play with them. But like I said, right now, look, there's no login. Anyone can come and use this and break this, and I have no idea what's going on. So here's a query. I'm asking to visualize that same data set I showed you, and here's where the prefix comes in. I want to see a 3D point plot. But really, everything's a URI. You describe these resources by URI. So if you look at views is this. So if I append 3D point plot to views, I get the full URI. So it's just a shorthand notation. And I borrowed this from the Sparkle query language. Here I'm saying that the format is space separated values, and the type is that weird D19 again. So give it off to Disco, and it found one pipeline. I'll show you an example where it shows 100. So here I say, look, you submitted this query. This pipeline can generate that 3D point plot that you're asking for, and it can show it in the web browser. I have some information about the pipeline, so you can view the pipeline in the text description. So here, the first service that gets called is this 3D gravity data service. It's a type transformer, and it tells you the format and ingest. Then the next service, the output of that service gets piped to this next one, which is this VT. K-glyph 3D sphere operator or service, I'm sorry, and then finally the output gets transformed, gets processed by the VTK polydata mapper, and then it gets shown to the web browser. And right now the system only knows that a web browser can show GIF, PNGs, and JPEG, so you can actually run that. It can also be a little graphical. This is kind of ugly, but I wanted something more visual. This is the same description of that pipeline, showing all the parameters too. So here's the BTK service. If you see closely, there's an arrow saying the output feeds into there, the output of that one feeds into this one, so on and so forth. It's kind of ugly, but it's something that I wanted to provide something better than textual description. So I can actually run this pipeline and say, look, I'm executing service one. So the service one is actually grabbing that file that was on the web, dereferencing it, getting it, processing it, and it'll pass it to service two. This thing needs to be able to do updates. I'm not sure it is. I'm not sure. What I mean by update, the browser does a continual pull. It's pulling it, but I don't know if it is right now because I haven't seen it refresh. It's a shame. That's another problem, Chunker. If you're using very kind of old technology, this should be, I would hope, using some nice JavaScript Ajax thing, some asynchronous communication back and forth instead of the browser having to do refreshes. But oh, okay, well, just looking updating it. That's nice. So here's a resultant visualization. So that pipeline generated that visualization. So there's no way to store it. This thing has a URL behind it, but if you hit back or you close the page, you lose it. You have to regenerate it again. That's not really ideal.
You have a method on here for taking the data information from the computer rather than a URL. Like, let's say I had an art.
A local file, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if I finished that, but I think it should definitely. Especially if you know that if your services are local, there's a lot of data you don't want to move around on the web as it grows larger. You don't really, especially if you do the HTTP protocol, which is not the most proficient. You definitely should be able to do local data. Just to show you some usability problems with this too. So I have a query. There's another interesting query. So all the queries that I've shown you so far, I'm specifying a specific view. But I have a special symbol called the wildcard. So this is the case. Look, I have data. I know the formatted type, but I don't really know what the best visualization of it is. Based on a knowledge base, show me everything that can be generated. And you submit this. And now it's going to look at all possible visualizations that can be generated from this data based on the services that you have registered in the knowledge base. This will take a little bit while longer because searching through a graph.
What do you mean it's going to look at?
It's going to try to generate pipelines that satisfy that request. But so when you specify, I want to see it as a specific visualization, you're constraining the set of possible pipelines that you can run. So in this case, just on a few services, it knows 102 different ways to visualize this as a contour map, a 3D bar chart, raster map, different combinations of services, different combinations of grading algorithms behind, which are just transformation services. Using different toolkits, GMT, ATK, NCL. Like I said, a lot of the times the services, I'm wrapping existing functionality that comes in a toolkit. So when you register it, it's nice that part of the description of the service includes, well, what toolkit are you wrapping? It's nice for users. Maybe they don't like BTK or NCL visualizations, but I could execute, I don't know, that same data set that you saw, the 3D point chart, you could also generate a, I don't know, let's look at this 3D bar chart and see if it runs. Like I said, if it doesn't run, I don't know why, but I think another interesting thing to show everyone is what I mean by the knowledge base. To give you a better idea of what really is the brains of the whole thing. Let's look at this one in particular. So each one of those nodes represents a service that somebody registered. And if there's a line connecting them, that means that the output of this service can be fed into that the input of that service. So really, you're looking at the knowledge base, all possible combinations of pipelines that can be inferred based on the services that are registered. So when you're doing a query, what are you really doing? The thing is it's checking your say I said I have data that's in format X. It's saying, well, what are all the services that work on format X? I want to see it as visualization Y. Well, what are all the services that generate visualization Y? And just doing some depth first searches to do that and finding all possible pipelines. So every time it finds, it can make it from source to target, that's a pipeline. Simple as that. But you see, this is just a few services, and you already see you're getting an explosion of combinations. I think I only have 30. I have let's see, services. I have only 45 services. You can imagine, I said some of these toolkits have hundreds and hundreds. So, being smart about this display, when I showed you all the different, there's a 3, the parameter rotated it wrong, but that's that same gravity file with the points, but visualized a different way. So you can see how parameters can really change the visuals. It should be nice to be able to look back, well, what parameter did I use and why is it on its wrong axis, So, but being really smart about this, I could see in the future there might be thousands of ways to generate the visualization. You really just don't want to show a big old list like that.
So how much is that a perceived problem? How big of a problem would that be? If you're giving this to say someone in geological sciences, they're going to know what graphs they're going to want to generate. So how much of a problem is really having all these options?
Well, they might know what graph they want to generate, sure, but they may not know, they may not be aware of a different service that generates maybe a higher quality graph than what they're used to. They might be used to one toolkit. You have the possibility to explore any toolkit that's registered on the web now. So I do see it as a nice exploration tool. Well, maybe let's see what else is better out there. And I actually did an interview and asked scientists at AGU, how many toolkits do you use? Oh, I just use one. Well, why? Well, that's the one I know and I don't really want to learn another one. Oh, that's perfect. It took them a long time to learn just that one. This affords them the opportunity to explore other toolkits that they would have never even considered. So I think this is an important view.
Any other questions?
I have a general question. What does VSCO stand for?
Visualization knowledge, it's just a made up. Yeah, it's not even really an acronym, it's more of You know what, honestly, it came from, I guess in Spanish, and I didn't know this, but there's VSCO, which is cross-eyed, I guess. And that's why if you look at the logo, it made a lot of sense, like the visual component of it.
Awesome.
Other questions?
So you have the add star in the web browser. Should they be able to select not all of them, but like a bunch of different ones? Like, can I say I want to look at it as a map, I want to look at it as a chart?
I think that would be great too. Yeah, right now it's either one or you get all. Yeah, that's a really neat idea.
Oh, so you filter it, you want to, you're talking about adding a filter before you look at all possible combinations.
Right.
Is that what you're saying? I'd like to look at maps and graphs only.
Right, instead of just one or everything.
Yeah.
Ideally, would you want in the end UI, would you want the whole query language exposed to the user, or basically just through selecting a couple options and drop down menus or both?
I like the reason why I like the box where you can put it is you can copy and paste. If someone says, hey, look, run this query. Since it's on the web, I can send you that query. Instead of sending you the visualization, I can send you the query. You can open your email, go to the VSCO, put it in, and you get the same visualization back with all the parameter settings that user specifies. You can specify parameters to the query that I haven't shown. But for a user who's exploring around, maybe I think the drop down would be the first thing you should probably
Maybe you
show.
have like an advanced mode option.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. Advanced mode, then you get to edit the query yourself if you want.
Maybe read it from a file that has this. That way they can just load the file as well. Here, run this file.
That's interesting too. I haven't thought of that, but I mean, I hadn't thought of that case. But maybe you have a batch query. I'm not sure. But I hadn't thought of that initially. I mean, for now, just having a nicer interface and drop down enhancement would be better.
So I feel like we're.
Yeah, but.
Okay, other questions? Yes.
So you wanted to save all the queries in the history and stuff, so privileged users can look at them. And the way it works right now is URLs because everything's online. But if you can upload your own data, what do you want to do with that? Should it actually store the data on the VSCO server, or is it going to say, user's own data? We can't do this again. Too bad.
So you're talking about for other people to reuse your data. I mean, if it's stored locally, and then that query is stored in history receptor, you try to re-execute it.
Well, yeah, you
Is that
talked about the
the deal or pipeline?
possibility of uploading your own data and just using that. Is that?
That wasn't really in the scope to do the data management part, especially when some of these data sets get really large. So there was that big assumption that it was already on the web, being hosted by some, better server than what this is.
Yes, if you were to do it locally,
You wouldn't be able to do
you
it.
wouldn't store it.
No.
Something you did one time.
Mhm.
One last question, do you want the images saved in folders locally? That way they can go back and be like, well, this is what we generated last month, these are the new findings, so they can compare them.
Ideally, I'd like it all stored on the web, because if they're at a different computer, I'd still want them to get the same, be able to still browse the same history.
Would you want people to be able to save it locally and save anything?
Well,
You know, it's
okay.
saved there, you can save it.
Definitely, you should be able to save locally. I mean, right now it's very rudimentary. I right-click the image and I can save as. That's not. It'd be nice if there was something a little bit more accessible with a button or something. But as far as automatically doing that, I want it to automatically be saved on the web server during the user account in their database. But I don't necessarily want it to be automatically, saved in some. Besides, I mean, if you're viewing it through a browser, you save the image already in your cache somehow. But I'm happy having the images automatically saved in the user account, the online database.
So that's it. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing your interview reports all next week. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a lot of